Oh, dear friends, there's a famous midrash which is brought on the Psikta Rabbati, which I would like to read. And I want to give it a different interpretation based on some ideas I heard from my colleague, Rabbi Chaim Peer. The Psikta brings a famous story that says that God went to the nations of the world to ask them if they're interested in these commandments before he came to the children of Israel. Of course, these are metaphors and have to be understood. It says in the beginning, he went to the children of Esav, and he said to them, would you be interested in receiving the Torah? And they said, Master of the universe, what does it say in your Torah? It says, well, it says you shall not murder. He said, well, didn't you tell our ancestor Esav, Al charbacha tichyeh, you will live on your sword? Isn't that what Jacob told him? Therefore, we cannot receive your Torah. Then he went to the children of Ammon and Moab. And he said to them, would you like to receive the Torah? And they said, Master of the universe, what does it say? It says, you shall not commit adultery, lo tinaf, not the sexual prohibitions. So they said, but our whole becoming as a nation happened that way. Wasn't it the daughters of Lot who slept with their father? And therefore we cannot receive the Torah. Then he went to the children of Ishmael and he said, would you like the Torah? And they said, Master of the universe, what does it say? It says, you shall not steal. They said, well, doesn't it say about our ancestor, he will be a wild man, his hand will be everywhere. So how can we accept that Torah? Then he went to the children of Israel and they said, we will do and we will listen. Now, this is an interesting midrash, and I would say that it has to be understood. An interesting follow-up, by the way, is the Talmud. The Talmud in Shabbat on 88a brings an unusual story after discussing actually on the previous page about the Revelation of Sinai. It tells a story that there was a Sadducee who saw the Amora Rava, 3rd century Amora, studying a Talmudic matter. And Rava was so engrossed in this Talmudic discussion that he put his fingers under his leg and was crushing his fingers without even realizing it. Until they were flowing with blood, the Sadducee said to Rava, you impulsive people, you put your mouths before your ears, because of course you said we will do and we will hear. And you're still preserving in your impulsiveness. First, you should have listened to the commandments and see if you were able to accept them or not. You don't just say, we're going to do it. And if not, then you don't accept them. So what's this thing of why did you as a people say we shall do and then we shall listen? First, you have to listen and see if it's for you, and then you decide if it's good or not. Rava answered him, we go in the ways of complete faith, because it's written, Tumat Yesharim Tanchem, which is Proverbs 11:3, which means in the perversiveness of the faithfulness, it says the perfect faith of the upright shall lead them. Tumat Yesharim Tanchem. Those people go in the ways of perversiveness, though, it says in the perversiveness of the faithless, that shall destroy them. So you have this little anecdote here in the Talmud about this fellow who meets Rava. And of course, it's a strange story, but Rava says, look, the man says to him, how come the Jewish people said we shall do and we shall listen? You should, if you're going to a store and you're buying something, first you want to know what it is, if it's something you need, if it's good for you, and then you accept. Rava says, yes, but we go with the way of faith. So I want to say that this midrash and this anecdote from the Talmud could be understood as two interpretations. Interpretation number one, and I specifically brought the version of the Psikta of Rav Kahana because the Psikta Rabbati, because it goes into greater detail. When these nations of Edom and Ammon, the children of Esav and the children of Lot and the children of Ishmael are saying, what's in it? And they're saying we cannot because it's different than us. It's basically saying that the Torah was given to the Jewish people because obviously the Jewish people have the possibility of keeping the Torah. There is some relationship between the Jewish people and their idea of faith that fits in well with Torah. Remember, the word in Hebrew, faith, emunah, comes from also the same root as the word omanut, which means an art. It's almost an art form, emunah. It's something that you develop, but also if God gave us the Torah and the commandments, it means that we have the ability to keep it. And if God gave us something faith-based, it means we have the ability within us to deal with this faith-based. Now, any individual on the planet has that ability, but I guess in the Jewish people has it in a special way, and therefore we're commanded it as a nation and not just as individuals. But the second thing I want to say here is that the anecdote in the Talmud, what does this mean that the Jewish people said, Naaseh ve-Nishma, we will do and we will hear? Because in a sense, the Sadducee is correct. Normally, if you go to buy something, you want to find out what it is before you accept it. Even if somebody offers you something, do you accept everything you're being offered? That is correct when you're talking about human issues. When it has to do with acquiring something, that's correct. But what the Jewish people were saying was, at the Revelation of Sinai, they have this special connection with God. It actually started in last week's Parsha with the crossing of the Red Sea, like I explained in my last week's talk. The crossing of the Red Sea was an amazing exposure to the God revealing his hand in history. And that was a special moment. That's what we talked about last week. The Revelation of Sinai is a second special moment. God revealing his Torah to the Jewish people, revealing his will and his word to the Jewish people, to the Israelite nation. So this is also another special moment. By that point, it says, Vayaminu b'Hashem of Moshe Avdo. It says already after the first one, and they believed in God and Moses, his servant. So the people now have perfect faith in God. There's a lot to discuss about that, but that's what the text says. And so when the Midrash is saying that God goes to the nations and goes to the Jews, they want to show that when the Jews are asked if they want the Torah, they say, yes, we will do, and then we will hear, to mean, God, we want you. We want the relationship with you. And if your Torah is the way to have a relationship with you, that's what we want. And we have complete faith that what you're going to command us will be good for us because we want the relationship with you. You know, when two individuals come into a marriage, there's a commitment involved, and they both know there's a commitment involved. And they know that the commitment might have ups and downs, but they do it anyhow because they want each other. And so when Israel is standing at Sinai, as the Talmud says, Al tikrei morasha el morasa, do not read, it's an inheritance to house of Jacob, but it's a betrothal to the house of Jacob. This tango starts at Sinai. It actually started already at the crossing of the Red Sea, but it continues at Sinai. And when we put on our tefillin in the morning and we say, Ve'irastichle leolam, you betrothed me, it's also from the prophets. You betrothed me forever. Ve'irastichle b'tzedek mishpat v'chesed rachamim, and you betrothed me with justice and with righteousness and with kindness and with mercy. Ve'irastichle be'emunah v'yadata Hashem, and I betrothed you with faith, and you shall know God. So the prophet is saying, this is this relationship. And when you have a relationship, you need basic trust that the responsibilities of the relationship are good for both sides. And in this case, for us, because God doesn't need the Torah, but he is interested in the relationship with mankind. And in a sense, the Jewish people are that maestro who is supposed to lead the path to faith. As it says in Yeshayahu chapter 2, that in the time to come, in futuristic times, that the house of Jacob will be standing on the top of the mountains, and all the nations shall go forth and say, L'chu v'na'alel har Hashem, let's go up to the mountain of God, to the house of Jacob, and let him teach us from their ways, and let's go through in the pathways. So basically, this relationship bringing is because also the Jewish people is supposed to be this maestro towards the nations, this light to the nations, as Isaiah said. And that's why in the book of Exodus, we're called Mamlechet Kohanim Begoy Kadosh, a kingdom of priests. And to be a kingdom of priests, it means there are other people out there. We're the priest to the nations. There's a relationship between the Jewish people and the nations of the world. And the more that we understand that, and the more that we teach this path, the more that hopefully the message will be heard. Shalom, shalom.